I become the best version of me, raised by certain degrees. They say I'm blurting disease, cause I spit anti-establishment. This is battleship, I'm calling your number and letter, and I only do it to make you better. Negative mindsets just won't let up, and I'm constantly battling my predecessors, cause I get too fed up. But the same when the same brings pain. Locks and chains reduce the potential of human brains. I'm too insane, at least it's what they label me. I'd rather be labeled as crazy than stuck in the matrix. I got Asia chasing cause I'm making these statements. I'm participating in the emancipation of a nation under interrogation. See my determination as you turn in these pages. I will never ever be degraded. They want me to dumb it down and say the industry ain't ready for too pure of a sound, for too pure of a heart, for too much empathy. I will give it all till I empty me. This is my manifest destiny. Preferably dropping bombs over melodies. You feel it heavily, you're telling me. Watch out. But it brings a resistance. Please don't miss this. Consequence vicious. We need to destroy the traumas. Go back and heal for a better tomorrow. Face the pain that you want to avoid. Stick out your chest and raise up your voice. I will not bend. I will not break. Stand in my place and I won't be swayed. Mark my words, lives will be saved. And even after I die, my legacy will remain. My emotions run amok, I'm out of luck. What the flying flip is going on? I say I'm a king, but I'm showing pawn. My logic feels intoxicated. No love left cause my heart's been raided. Feeling jaded, want me medicated. Feeling like a fish cause I'm hooked and baited. And I can't find peace. I become my own worst enemy. Sipping Hennessy, feeling dead in me. If my pain were a woman, gotta let her free. But she's holding on with a grip of death. The pain gets worse with every breath. I just wanna keep you in the dark so low. You feel it in your soul. Never see the light of day. You say, yeah, I think I'm going crazy, 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 crazy. I think I'm going crazy, 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 crazy. I think I'm going crazy, 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 crazy. I think I'm going crazy, 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 crazy. I don't like who I become. What have I done? I'm going numb, ain't having fun. I think I'm going crazy, 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 crazy. I think I'm going crazy, 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 crazy. Crazy is as crazy does. I catch myself trying to flirt with Lady Luck, but she just curves me. I'm worried, vision's blurry, feeling like death's coming early. You never get rid of me, even when you say that you're getting sick of me. Pain is so vividly making you sickening, feeling with misery, burning like Listerine. I spit on your grave, I'm taking control until you misbehave. The pain comes in waves, today I'm a slave. A trophy to gain, I'll put you on display. And laugh at your misfortune, laughing at your tears pouring, laughing at attempts of ignoring. Pieces foreign, the more you fight, the more you let me more in. This can't be life, but Doc help me out, I can no longer fight. I'm crying uncontrollably, I need a hold of me, what's life supposed to be? And I'm feeling suicidal, all my rivals got me quitting on survival. My heart needs to mend, I don't wanna kill myself, just want the pain to end. But it feels like an uphill battle, I see your misery with a broken paddle. I've journaled, have addictions, there's a hole in me cause something's missing. I'm in prison, in my mind, gotta hear what's been left behind. EMDR, whatever it takes, if I don't see change, I swear I'm gonna break. I just wanna keep you in the dark so low. You feel it in your soul. Never see the light of day. You say, yeah, I think I'm going crazy, 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 crazy. I think I'm going crazy, 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 crazy. I think I'm going crazy, 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 crazy. I think I'm going crazy, 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 crazy. I don't like who I become. What have I done? I'm going numb, ain't having fun. I think I'm going crazy, 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 crazy. I think I'm going crazy, 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 crazy. Keep hope alive. 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 Watch me do my work. Working hard to achieve my dreams, it's harder than it seems. Watch you do my work. Sky's the limit, gotta hit it till you fit it, revel in it. Watch you do my work. Hungry for change to have my name known, cause I say so while the days go. Watch you do my work, cause I stand for a purpose. Watch you work this, cause I'm working. Watch you do my work. Watch you working harder than it ever did. Spitting from the hearts of people that feeling irrelevant. Spitting for the hell of it, embracing all the elements. Music, chemical content that'll challenge your intelligence. This ain't for the faint to the heart. Mature folks thinking that I'm way too smart. Too mature for my age, wanna put me in the grave, but I need a safe face, cause I'm running my race. Running my race, even overweight. But you see me overweight, cause I'm stealing off your plate. And I'm feeling so great, even though I make mistakes. Do whatever it takes to make winning the Mason race. But you will never bury me. Talking bad about the man is like heresy. On fire like kerosene, apparently my words are like therapy. Watch you do my work. Working hard to achieve my dreams, it's harder than it seems. Watch you do my work. Sky's the limit, gotta hit it till you fit it, revel in it. Watch you do my work. Hungry for change to have my name known, cause I say so while the days go. Watch you do my work, cause I stand for a purpose. Watch you work this, cause I'm working. Watch you do my work. I don't look like a rapper, what they look like, what they sound like, why they sound right. I'm too busy cruising in my lane, I don't need to buy fame. And this is why I came to put in work in the hearts of man. There's nothing harder than I like a martyr can. Watch you do my work, watch you do it well. Been through hell and I'm telling a story that's so compelling. It's got me screaming and yelling, negative is a repellent. And ain't no dreams I'm selling, cause I guess I know I'm rebelling. I work hard, you can tell, full of heart, raising hell. Cause you're gonna see me rock this scene like prophecy on a lock and key. It's gotta be something to write home about, cause I work with pride, I got a fire inside. Watch me do my work. Working hard to achieve my dreams, it's harder than it seems. Watch you do my work. Sky's the limit, gotta hit it till you fit it, revel in it. Watch you do my work. Hungry for change to have my name known, cause I say so while the days go. Watch you do my work, cause I stand for a purpose. Watch you work this, cause I'm working. Watch you do my work. Work, work, work. Watch you do my work. Work, work. Watch you put in that work, work, work. Watch you do my work, work, work. Watch you put in that work, work, work. Watch you do my work, work, work. Watch you put in that work, work, work. Watch you do my work, work, work. Watch you do my work. Working hard to achieve my dreams, it's harder than it seems. Watch you do my work. Sky's the limit, gotta hit it till you fit it, revel in it. Watch you do my work. Hungry for change to have my name known, cause I say so while the days go. Watch you do my work, cause I stand for a purpose. Watch you work this, cause I'm working. Watch you do my work. Working hard to achieve my dreams, it's harder than it seems. Watch you do my work. Sky's the limit, gotta hit it till you fit it, revel in it. Watch you do my work. Hungry for change to have my name known, cause I say so while the days go. Watch you do my work, cause I stand for a purpose. Watch you work this, cause I'm working. Watch you do my work. Work, work, work. Watch you do my work, work, work. Watch you put in that work, work, work. Watch you do my work, work, work. Watch you put in that. We have a problem. Uh-oh, there's a problem in the industry. You probably didn't think too many people would be into me. You want carbon copies? Well, I'm sorry to disappoint. It's a breaking point. Words so absurd that I'm breaking joints. Who's this brother in a suit jacket think he is? Don't he know that rappers ain't taking this serious? It's all about making hits, lyrics to the side. Humility isn't welcome cause we're
Welcome to Therapy Thursdays. I am your host, Marcus Alexander Velasquez, and I am so happy that you guys are here with us. Therapy Thursdays is where we bring the therapist to you. This show, this platform, this podcast, videocast, whatever you want to call it. This source of information is meant to bring awareness, not just awareness of therapy, but actual credible knowledge and resources from real life therapists who do this on a daily basis. So this is not talking about things in theory. We're talking about practice. We are talking about people who are in the thick of it, people who have supported those throughout this crazy pandemic that we've been living in. This is real credible information. And there's pretty much there's probably more, but at least three right now that I'm thinking of, three major points that are behind this show. One is to introduce people to therapy and what real therapy is like. Two is to clean up any misrepresentations of therapy that people may have. Some people may have heard of therapy, but heard it in a bad light. Maybe the media misportrayed it, but we're here to clear those things up. And thirdly, this show is here to inspire you to want to seek out professional therapy for yourself. I am the host because I myself have gone through therapy about 6-7 years. I forget the exact timing. I didn't time it all, but therapy has done wonderful. I'm telling you, wonderful things in my life. It had to be wonderful because I ended up making a podcast about it. So it's pretty awesome. But therapy is wonderful. It's an amazing tool to the point where we are talking about it every single Thursday at 7:00 Central Standard Time till ? I don't know. I'm very blessed that we are booked every single Thursday till December, which is wonderful. I'm so happy and humbled by that. So thank you for being here. One of the best things about the show is we have a live Q&A section throughout the entire show. So whenever you want to chime in with a comment or you have a question, either on tonight's topic, which is autism, either on tonight's topic or anything therapy or mental health related, please join us on YouTube. Please type in the live chat below. Do not be shy. There is no judgment here. We're all here accepting who we are, where we're at, but striving for better. And that's really the goal. There is no perfection, but as long as we're striving to become better and make actionable steps towards that betterment, that's really all you can ask. Because again, we've talked about this before, that weakness, and I use quotes because I don't have a better word for it, but weakness is part of the human condition. Nobody is perfect at everything. You may be great in one area and suffer in 99 other areas. So we are here to balance each other out, learn from one another, and push each other towards empowerment and betterment, all that jazz. So I'm glad you guys are here. Please do me a favor and like this video on YouTube. Please subscribe as well if you'd like to continue to find out about these episodes and tune in every time we go live. But as always, this show is not about me. It is about our lovely guest therapist and you guys. If you have watched previous episodes, especially last week, you are familiar with this wonderful, amazing woman I'm about to bring onto the show. She is my friend, whether she likes it or not. She's my friend. I claim it right now. But I'm so happy to have her here and excited for you guys and all of us to learn from her beautiful brain. So please help me welcome Mrs. Melissa Finley.
All right. Okay. So can you hear me okay, Marcus?
I can hear you great.
Oh, good. I have this whole new system today. So I'm glad to hear it works. Yeah.
All right. And then we're matching with the headphones too.
I know. My husband's had these headphones this whole time we've been meeting. He just didn't let me know it. So so I'm all set up here.
Well, we'll be good going forward then.
Yeah, we're definitely friends. I'm good. I think I told you I pawned my son off on my neighbor tonight so that I could do this podcast.
Nice.
Yeah. So
I love it. That's how devoted you are.
Mm-hmm. Very devoted to this. Yeah. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, before we get into it, I always want to read our disclaimer. This show is for informational purposes only. You are completely responsible for what you do with the information presented, and myself and all of our guests cannot be held liable for any misuse or misunderstanding of the information presented. Please always consult a trained mental health professional before making any decisions regarding treatment of yourself and others. Sweet. Awesome. So, Melissa, I know a lot of people who have been keeping in touch with the show are familiar with you, but for those who are not, can you give us a quick rundown of who is Melissa Finley? How long have you been in practice? What got you into therapy that made you want to become a therapist, and any specific mental health topics that you like to focus on?
Sure. So I started private practice. I actually became a therapist as a school counselor first, and I was a teacher. I was working with families that had negative experiences at private or public schools. So I worked for a charter school, and in the area of math, especially, there was a lot of math anxiety, and that I just noticed it would just kind of get passed on. So I thought I could make a difference as a school counselor. So I got my degree from Northeastern Illinois here in Chicago,
Awesome.
in their school counseling program. And you could also do kind of like a double degree to get certified as a licensed therapist. So I did that.
Cool.
And I tried school counseling, I think for 5 years, and decided to go the public or the private route where I was actually working with individuals. And that I moved over there about 3 years ago. And I work with mostly adults. I have like one adolescent that I work with now. I used to work with all families, and that was too much for me. Yeah, it's hard to do. I want to work with families again. Research shows that the most change happens when you can get into family therapy.
Wow.
That is the most impact. And it makes sense because it's a system, a family system. So if you can ever get your whole family into therapy, you're going to have the most change happen the quickest. But
very cool.
Yeah, so I would like to do that eventually. So now I have my own private practice here in the suburbs. I go in a couple times a week. I work from telehealth. I love working with neurodivergent individuals, hence today's topic. I like to work with trauma and body work. I do EMDR, and yeah. And I became a therapist because, therapists changed my life. So I always admired it, and I feel very grateful for my job.
Oh, that's nice. Unfortunately, you don't hear that from many people, that they're grateful for their job. So thank you for doing what you do. Thank you that it's a passion for you and it actually comes from your heart, because I'm sure this is just being real and reality. Not every therapist is going to be a great therapist. There are those who can grow in certain ways. For some, I'm sure it's just a job and a paycheck for them. But we want to be honest and real about that, because we are motivating people to attend therapy. So if and when you attend therapy, for all those in our audience, you may not find the perfect therapist for you the first time. So feel free to, I believe Melissa last week talked about interviewing your therapist, finding out, their history, how long they've been in practice. If they focus on the specific things that you struggle with, feel free to interview your therapist. If the first one doesn't work out, find the second one, find the third one. It's worth it. Even me, myself, I really got the most healing when I started with my second therapist. So the first one got me on the path. But the second one is really where I started digging in deep and really started getting some change, some wonderful change. I want to throw Melissa's website up on the screen as well, melissafinley.com, very appropriately. So if you want to get a hold of Melissa, please check out her website. Melissa, are you taking on new clients? I think I asked this last time.
Yeah, so the summer to fall schedule changes for a lot of my clients. So I'm on a bit of a hold right now as I move the schedule around, but I should be taking new clients again in September.
Cool. Good to know. Yeah. If you guys are interested in Melissa, please visit her website and reach out to her. Please also, in the description of this video, there is a link that says contact our therapist. It's a Google Drive document. Please utilize that resource. You open it up, it'll have a spreadsheet of all the contact information for all of our guest therapists. If you want to reach out to one of them, please utilize that resource. Reach out. These are amazing people. They've been on the show. You can look at previous episodes to hear what they have to offer, but please use that resource. Awesome. So today's topic, we are talking about autism. And you are the pro here because I know very little about autism. I know that there is a spectrum. I couldn't even describe that spectrum if I wanted to. So I'm glad we have a pro here on the show today. So yeah, do you have any personal ties to autism and why in particular you are passionate about this topic?
Sure. So that's a great question. I love that you asked it that way. I first want to put a plug out to Chicago residents for Coffee, Hip Hop, Mental Health. There's a normalized therapy university,
Nice.
and I'm one of the therapists.
Are you
on that? Yeah.
I've been connecting with the guy who started it, Christopher Lamarck.
He's great. He's great.
Awesome.
So if people can't afford therapy, they do provide therapy. You get 10 appointments that they pay for. And it's just a fabulous resource. And they do a really nice job matching the client with the therapist. So check that out. And so what connected me to this? So when I was in the classroom, I worked with autistic children, and I'm ashamed at what little I knew. I'm by no means a pro, but I've done a lot of work in this area and getting to know it because it became personal for me. So I worked in the classroom. I had some autistic children in my classroom. They had IEPs. I worked with the special ed teacher, that sort of thing. I knew very little. I knew probably what most people know. And it was just kind of this idea of what autism is. If I asked you, which I'm not going to, but if I did, I said, what do you think of when you think of autism? A lot of times you think of like a white boy, middle class boy, it's kind of this picture. And there's a reason why you think that way. That's where a lot of the studies and a lot of the symptom checklist kind of came from, was from boys, children, and in that white middle class status. So, and those were what, my experiences with autism were very limited, and I didn't look into it a lot. I just kind of went off of what I had known from movies or, the general autistic traits. And then when my son was 4, he was having a really hard time in preschool, and he actually had a hard time ever since he left the house in any environment he was in. And we got a neuropsych evaluation done, which our insurance covered. A lot of insurances don't. They can be extremely expensive, but some insurances do, and ours did. And we got him tested, and it came back that he was autistic with ADHD and sensory processing disorder. And at that point, I really kind of dove into the world of just the language, what it meant. I got into some autistic adult groups. And since then, we have discovered that both my husband and I are autistic.
Wow.
I knew I had ADHD. I was diagnosed with that in college, but I did not know that I was autistic. And I guess my husband kind of had some idea that he was, but this was all kind of discovered from my son getting this neuropsych.
Are they linked, ADHD and autism, or are they their own things?
So that's a great question. They are their own things. However, there's a huge population of people with both. And then a lot of the symptoms, like I have these like Venn diagrams where a lot of the symptoms fall into that middle ground where it's both. Like the symptoms could check off both ADHD and autism. So, my husband does not have ADHD, and I could definitely see the difference between the two of us and how it shows up. But there are a lot of areas where they show up in both. Yes.
Okay, awesome. So we are talking about a topic with someone who lives with the topic. So, very interesting perspective you have here today. So, let's get into it. I always love to define our terms. So, can you please let us know the most formal and definitive definition that you know of autism, please?
Yes. Okay. So I'm going to read something that is in my community. This is the most affirming language, and it covers the topic in a way that it doesn't pathologize autism. It's from Nick Walker, who is she wrote a book, Neuroqueer Heresies. So this is her definition. Autism is a genetically based human neurological variant. The complex set of interrelated characteristics that distinguish autistic neurology from non-autistic neurology is not fully understood, but current evidence indicates that the central distinction is that the autistic brains are characterized by particularly high levels of synaptic connectivity and responsiveness. I'll get to that and how that shows up. This tends to make the autistic individual's subjective experience more intense and chaotic than that of the non-autistic individuals. On both the sensory motor and cognitive levels, the autistic mind tends to register more information, and the impact of each bit of information tends to be stronger and less predictable. Autism is a developmental phenomenon, meaning that it begins in utero and has a pervasive influence on development on multiple levels throughout the lifespan. Autism produces distinctive, atypical ways of thinking, moving, interaction, and sensory and cognitive processing. One analogy that has often been made is that the autistic individuals have a different neurological operating system than non-autistic individuals. According to current estimates, somewhere between 1% and 2% of the world's population is autistic. Wow. While the numbers suggest that this increase in diagnosis is the result of increased public and professional awareness, rather than an actual increase in the prevalence of autism. Despite underlying neurological commonalities, autistic individuals are vastly different from one another. So I want to just like let you know that I'm speaking one autistic perspective, but there is a vast difference. So it's really important not to clump autistic people together because of the history of always doing that.
Yeah.
Some autistic individuals exhibit exceptional cognitive talents. However, in the context of a society designed around the sensory, cognitive, developmental, and social needs of non-autistic individuals, autistic individuals are almost always disabled to some degree, sometimes quite obviously and sometimes more subtly.
That is the formal definition.
She nailed it. I mean, that is just such a beautiful, it's such a beautiful definition. And I think it takes away from the traditional idea people have in their heads about what autistic people are like or what does autism mean.
Great. Thank you for sharing that. Awesome. Well, we got the formal definition for that. Is there, so again, we want to clear up misinformation here. Is there a link between autism and Asperger's?
So yeah, so here's the history. There's a big history behind that. So basically, Asperger's has been kind of taken out of diagnoses now. So even though people in the last 5 years probably have been diagnosed with Asperger's, that is no longer a part of autism. It's like, or it's no longer a diagnosis. It all falls under autism. But the difference was when Asperger's was originally kind of developed as a diagnosis. Did you ever see Rain Man?
I have not. I know I
Oh,
should. I know it's a
wow.
great movie.
Wow.
Yeah. I heard a lot about it, but I actually haven't sat down and watched it.
So that's like your typical like Asperger's. Like there's like a big a lot like Asperger's is more considered more like an intellectual, like there's some sort of really high level of intellectual giftedness.
Mm,
Maybe there's more of us, maybe the guy on Rain Man was more traditional in the way that he socialized and communicated for what people thought autism was.
yeah.
Asperger's might be like someone who's a little more fits into more of the norms, the society
Mm,
norms of neurotypical people with this like really intense, like almost like really intellectual part of them. So the Asperger's is still used, but the community and in the DSM-5 where people get diagnosed has been taken out. It's been taken out
wow.
completely. Mhm.
Wow. You mentioned something twice now, and I want to talk about it because you mentioned earlier before you really started getting in depth into studying autism that you took some information from media, from movies, and you just
Mhm.
mentioned Rain Man again, which is another movie. So, what is your opinion on how mental health is represented in media, specifically movies? Do you think it's accurate? Do you think we should always take it with a grain of salt?
Mhm.
Let us
It's
know.
not, I don't think it's accurate at all. I mean, there are shows about therapists out there that just are cringeworthy. I'm like, we
Mm,
would never, that is completely unethical, And I think that when TV shows or movies represent something, I just think they take all of the stereotypes and cram them into something.
mm,
And I think that can be, well, obviously it's very misleading and confusing. There's a show now, I think mentioned it last week, the Bear. Did I mention that last week to you? It was filmed in Chicago.
I'm not sure.
Okay. There's a show out called The Bear, and it's about this guy. He runs a sandwich shop in Chicago. Uh like a Al's Beef or something. It's like
Oh, this is
a
starting to sound
beef.
familiar. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's so inaccurate, of like what a beef shop here in Chicago. I mean, it is filmed in Chicago, but they have like 10 employees and it's a real small shop. And he gets into all this like really fancy cooking. And his brother dies of addiction. He killed himself, but he was an addict.
Mm.
So they have this little clip of Al-Anon in there. And this is an example. In
Can you
that, like,
explain what Al-Anon is for the
oh
folks who don't know?
yeah. Yeah, thank you. Al-Anon is a support, it's a 12-step program, a support program for uh, people who have been affected by people who have relationships with addicts or alcoholics. So anyone who's been affected by addiction within a relationship. So maybe your best friend is an alcoholic, or maybe your best friend drinks a lot, or maybe your brother uses drugs and it affects your relationship with them. Al-Anon is a support group for that. So
Just
it
threw their
is,
website up on the screen.
yeah, awesome. Thank you. Um, so he goes to an Al-Anon meeting, and actually Molly Ringwald is the speaker at the Al-Anon meeting, and she throws out like every Al-Anon slogan there is in like 5 minutes. I'm like, that would never happen. So someone did their homework and they like found all these Al-Anon slogans and they just like crammed them into this
Wow.
meeting. So then if someone goes to an Al-Anon meeting, they're expecting all of this like really like, I don't know, I guess it's clear, short, intense, like keep it
Mm.
in your hula hoop, or I'm going to keep my side of the street clean. But you're not going to get that at an Al-Anon meeting necessarily, because a lot of speakers you hear aren't going to use those direct, slogans. So that's a misrepresentation, right?
For sure.
Or when like going to an AA meeting, like in movies, they never depict it like the same way. So, that's an example.
So I would say the same way we do not get our relationship advice from rom-coms, romantic comedies, we should not get our mental health examples from media either. So
that's
that is
right.
great to know.
Right.
I've heard of different terms when it comes to autism, things such as high functioning and low functioning. So what do those functioning labels mean with autism?
Yeah. So the functioning labels in my profession are used quite a bit. The autistic community, meaning autistic adults, are really pushing to get rid of functioning labels in this way, because what people think of when they think of high functioning versus low functioning creates a picture that is based off of the outside perspective, not what's actually going on for the autistic person. So perhaps, they might say the the services that or the struggles that an autistic person might have. So there's some autistic people are nonverbal, so that would be an autistic person that's nonverbal. We wouldn't say that's a low functioning autistic person, because low functioning on what? On whose perspective?
Yeah.
And the history with autism has been such that the support, the language, the practices to heal or cure autism have all been set up by people who are not autistic. And it is abusive, and it has been abusive. So there's practices like ABA, applied behavioral analysis, which is a really intense, really popular therapy that adults, parents find for their children. Now we have a bunch of adult autistic people, autistic adults who were given ABA therapy as children, who were severely traumatized from it. So they are big advocates of speaking out against ABA therapy. Because when they were children, they couldn't. And it's still really popular, and it's still taught in schools. And there is a ton of research on how it helps. But the problem is it helps the autistic person become more holistic, more neurotypical, fit into more of a culture that is set up against the natural way an autistic person might want to be. Basically, it's saying we want to change how you are at your natural level.
Okay, great. I want to take one step back real quick because we got a comment on YouTube from Gina McElway, because we were talking about mental health in the media. So her question is, what about the show The Good Doctor? Is it realistic for him to have autism and be a doctor?
Oh, that's a great question. Yes, 100%. For sure. There are beautiful autistic doctors and autistic everythings. I work with autistic people at my practice, and there's autistic people walking amongst us everywhere, and it's very realistic. Yes.
Okay, awesome. Thank you,
But
Gina,
I don't
for
know
the
The Good
question.
Doctor, so I'll have to check that out.
Yes, definitely. I've seen previews for it. I've never watched it myself, but yeah. And then still on the topic of media, especially misportraying mental health. I've seen the title for this movie, never watched it, but there's literally a movie that came out 2 years ago called Bad Therapy. We don't endorse that show here, that movie here, because that title alone is, no, thank you. No, thank you. So Melissa, what have we learned about autism over the last 10 years?
So I wanted to, the autistic movement, and I am a big advocate for the autistic movement. I'm going to read to you a couple things that I think are really important when you're thinking about, so a couple in thinking of the therapeutic room in relationships, there is a huge increase in requests for therapists that can work with the spouse or the significant other or the partner of someone who is autistic, right? So a neurotypical person with a neurodivergent person, and there's trouble in communication style or whatever. And so the neurotypical person is seeking out therapy to have more of like a better understanding and better skills in communication with someone who is autistic. Okay.
That's great. Yeah.
So that's one thing. The other thing is, in my practice, I have helped people. I am not ethically allowed in the state of Illinois to diagnose people with autism or ADHD. It has to be done by a psychologist.
Oh, okay. You said I was like, what did you do that you can't diagnose someone? But you're saying your title.
No, okay. As a therapist, as an LCPC, okay. I'm not ethically allowed. In other states, your therapist is allowed. Some therapists are in other states, but in Illinois, no. So, but what I am allowed to do is research it with them. I am allowed to go over things with them, find symptoms, talk about their life. And in my practice, I've done that with several clients, and discovering that they are autistic has changed their life, has been literally life-changing as adults. So the other part of this is, if you are hearing this podcast and you're hearing anything that sounds like it might be you, and I want to make sure we have time to go into a little bit of that today, because I think that's really important.
Sure.
I gave you a site that I wanted you to share with the audience, and you can take a couple different tests on there, and it'll tell you where you fall. One of those tests, by the way, is like 200 questions, but if you are taking those and answering those questions, I have found that people who are autistic get really excited about them, because they're like, yeah, that's me. Yeah, that's me. And people are like, Melissa, you're killing me here. Like, there's so many, So I guess you might know just in that alone, but no. So back to what we've learned over the last 10 years. So I'm going to talk to you about a movement that's happening right now that's really cool in the community. We are advocating to change this idea that the autism exists in a medical model rather than a social or a neurodivergent model. So in a medical model, autism is pathologized, right? So it's like, we have to treat these symptoms. And what's happening now, and what's been happening, I would say probably started about 10 years ago. In the last 5 years, it's really got huge momentum.
That's great.
Is going like, I don't really want to address these symptoms to change them.
Okay.
I want to know what I can do to find more places where I feel comfortable, to find more ways where I can live in a way where I don't have to change myself, the natural form of myself, to fit into this kind of model of society, neurotypical model of society. So, when you are if you have not been diagnosed or even diagnosed, there's a big thing in the autistic community called masking. And masking is where you hide your symptoms. You hide them to fit into more neurotypical ideals. So what ends up happening is there's a big population, autistic population, of people who are very anxious, depressed, who a lot of misdiagnosing of, borderline or social anxiety, or even, agoraphobia, of these things that happen because the masking is so intense and there's no understanding of why. So, for instance, with autistic people, you're in like our school setting is a neurotypical system. Okay. So the education system is neurotypical. And when you're not diagnosed, and even diagnosed, there's not a lot of, I have not had good luck with people who are affirming, autistic affirming or neurodivergent affirming with my son. Um, so your kid, you don't know, but your natural state, like, that definition where your brain lights up, they've done like research, and your brain lights up and takes in more information. Okay. So, like, you and I are talking, and I'm picking up on your facial expression. I'm picking up on your energy level. I'm picking up on where your eyes are moving, the way your body's moving. And my brain is taking it in like it's super important. Like, I need to know what this means and how to read it and how to interact with it. So then I might miss something else that's a little bit bigger. So it's like me paying attention to really micro things, and I might miss something that's bigger. So then I'm processing it, and I don't feel safe. I don't know. I don't understand your facial cues, and I don't know. And so I shut down or I mimic.
Wow.
And this is a big thing I've learned. So we know mimicking can fall under that freeze state, but I have realized how much of my life I spent doing this, and I never knew why. So as an autistic person, I found the person in the room who seemed like they kind of had it the most together as far as social or, social cues or whatever. And I would mimic what they were doing, or I would laugh when they laughed, or I would, and this is a very common masking thing, right? So my son goes to school and he gets in trouble. He has a hard time following the rules, but he's trying really hard. And then when he gets home, he falls apart. He has a meltdown. So autistic meltdowns are different than tantrums. So his nervous system is just out of control. A lot of autistic, so it's called stimming. So a lot of autistic people will do something called stimming that kind of helps them regulate their system or gives them a space. So like, like moving, like shaking a pen around or tapping your fingers like this, or, rocking. I'm always rocking. Rocking is like a stim. Repeating phrases. I do this like thing where I kind of whistle through my mouth, and that's like a stim. Listening to the same song over and over and over again is like a stim. So these are some things that are not understood by someone as being maybe that your brain just isn't the same as like a neurotypical brain. And so you think something's wrong with me. I'm not okay. This doesn't make any sense. And you hide it. You hide it and you hide yourself.
Wow. Wow. We have another question from Miss Gina as well. Or again, I should say. I'm going to throw it up on the screen. She is saying, so are you saying that if I take the test, it may point to me having autism tendencies? And if so, what should I do? Great question.
Yeah, that is a great question. So this is not like, this is not like the test that I think a psychologist will give you. Let me tell you another important thing is that the autistic community, 100%, myself included, accepts and identifies self-diagnosis. So if Gina, if you go on and you take that test and it says you're autistic, it gives like a scale. There's like 3 of them. One of them is kind of for like Asperger's, which falls under the autism umbrella.
Wow.
Let's say you test and it says you have autism or you have tendencies. And you're like, yeah, I kind of want to research this more. What you do is, depending on, here's the other problem. We have a lot of psychologists that are not familiar with diagnosing adults with autism and who are not, they're not, what's the word I want to use? Versed in working with women autistic women, because here's the problem with autistic women versus autistic. I'm not saying there's autistic. Women are more socialized to fit in, and people expect different things from women than they do from men. So growing up as a little boy or a little girl, people are spoken to you differently. People speak to you differently. People expect things from you differently. And socially, girls are meant to read nonverbal cues much more than boys. So what that does is that changes the way you mask, and it also changes the way the DSM-5 criteria meet the autistic diagnosis. So I have a great podcast, but I'm going to give you this name. Henderson. Her last name is Henderson. Anyway, she talks about girls and autism and how it shows up differently. And then it looks like, I don't know, but Gina, it looks like you might be a person of color.
She is.
BIPOC. Okay. So there's another kind of, what's the word? Like obstacle, because a lot of the research and a lot of the psychologists that work with diagnoses, they miss, BIPOC, like autistic not symptoms, but autistic like things in people of color. So there's a real low number. There's like a very skewed number of autistic people of color that have been diagnosed.
Wow.
Because of that bias, because of that, when the DSM-5 was created, it was like all white, and so I would say that if you do decide, so you can self-diagnose, and there are great resources. And if you want to email me, I can send you those resources, Gina. I can send you some books and some podcasts to listen to help you with your self-diagnosis. The other thing is, if you do seek out a diagnosis from an official diagnosis, you want to seek out a psychologist. So you would do a psychologist that works with, I would ask them, have you worked with, black women? Have you worked with black men? Have you diagnosed, I would point blank ask them, because when I was looking for my diagnosis, I asked people, have you worked with women, adult women? How many adult women have you diagnosed as autistic? Because if they say none, or I've only tested a couple and I've never diagnosed, I'm like, no, I don't want to, that's not okay with me. So that's an important thing to keep in mind too.
Okay, great. We got a couple other comments in the chat, so I want to show love to everybody who's giving comments. We appreciate it. Bren B has been chiming in. She said, wow, at one point when you were talking about the differences between like boys and girls being raised, when you're talking about the women, she says, so true. And then she said, interesting. So she is engaged. Thank you, Bren B. Gina is back again, and she has a question for you. What do you do when your son breaks down?
That's a great question. So this has taken so many. I mean, he was diagnosed at 4. I've gone through 3 different therapists to try to work with my son and my family. I will not do ABA therapy with my son. And that's the most common. So what I've learned that works the best is I get to know so if you think about autism, like, everything my son hears and takes in is turned up loud. So what people don't understand is like an autistic meltdown isn't like a tantrum, isn't a kid being a brat, isn't them trying to, but they are like really overstimulated. Their brains are tired. They have already been misunderstood all day long, been treated like crap by ableist teachers.
Wow.
They have been put down in ways that is their natural capacity. And often autistic people don't follow rules just because of rules. So they're not motivated by the same thing. So it's like, my son doesn't see the difference between an adult and a child. He just doesn't. And it's like, that's part. like a huge population, there's a huge percentage of LGBTQ people that are autistic, because autistic people do not follow norms just to follow norms. They don't,
Wow.
that's not something they do. So my son, what has worked for my son is I have learned to work with his sensory processing. So like I know like last year he had the worst teacher. So when he got home from school, I had his favorite snacks ready to go.
Mm.
I had he loved getting on YouTube to just shut down his brain. So when he has a breakdown or a meltdown, I give him the space for it and I teach him how he can do it. So he was hitting me at one point when things got really bad at school. That has really decreased. Um, uh, I allow him to verbally say things that I know most parents wouldn't, because it helps with him getting out anger.
Sure.
I allow him to say things to me like, "You're so stupid. I hate you. You're stupid." I let him do that, because if he doesn't get it out, there are autistic adults who push it inward, meaning they hit themselves, they they hurt themselves in other ways because they were never allowed to get out
Wow.
that pressure and that expectation of like he needs to get it out. So that's a hard question. What I do is I take away the stimulus as much as possible. I try to bring him into his window of tolerance in some way. And that means like if he's hitting, I give him a pillow to hit. If he's throwing things around, I kind of take things away, or I will say things to him like, "I can't let you throw things." I try to hold him, which he doesn't like me holding him. If he runs off into his bedroom, I'll leave him alone in his bedroom and be outside his door. But I think the best way is to learn their triggers and learn their language so that they don't get to the point of breaking down so much, because it's so much harder. It's so hard on me when he gets like that. I mean, he recovers faster than I do. I'm like, oh, so yeah, it's so hard. But if you get a better understanding of what's happening, it's not because he's bad. I mean, people are like, "Why don't you try this? And why don't you try that? And try this?" And I'm like, "You don't understand." And then when we got that diagnosis, it made so much sense, because his brain is taking in all this information. It's too much.
Yeah, it's overloaded.
Yep.
Awesome. Thank you, Gina, for your questions. Anyone else in the chat, please feel free to type your questions and comments, and we will definitely get to them. I think this is a big question next, because it's known that autism is a spectrum, but for me, especially personally, I really don't know what that means. In my understanding, it just means there's a spectrum of symptoms of autism, and some people are somewhere on the spectrum. So how is autism a spectrum?
Yeah, so I wanted to let me see if I wanted to show you a picture, because everyone thinks of the spectrum as linear, and so that would be like the high and the low functioning. And the spectrum is like this. Okay, hold on, let me show you if I can pull it up here and you guys can see it. Can you see the circle of colors there?
I do.
Okay.
What is that called? I can look it up on my end.
It's called the trait expression. And here, I'll put in the chat box so you can put the link in here. Carrie, the person who created this one. There's a lot of them going around, but this is
you said it's trait expression. What's the rest of it?
Autism, yeah.
For autism?
Carrie Burt seminars.com. Okay, so that's the website. Oh, man, I should have emailed this to myself so I could pull it up. But
that's all right.
Anyway, so the idea though is that it's not linear, and so within this circle you have like a low expression of the trait, a moderate expression, and then a high expression of the trait. And the traits can be, I'm going to name them to you because I think they're really important for people with children that they think may be autistic or themselves. Stimming, anxiety, noise sensitivity, tactile sensitivity, sensory seeking. So like my son will like hit his head up against me, you know, when he's seeking that sensory. Scripting, that's repeating like words. Like my son loves, Marcus, my son loves saying Jesus Christ. I mean, not appropriate.
Wonderful.
Like he'll be like, Jesus Christ. Like he just loves the way. And then when I tell him, I'm like, Simon, you know, some people will find that offensive if you don't say it in the right. Well, it's someone's name, isn't it? Why can't I say it? I'm like, all right. So repetitive behaviors, dysregulation, resistant eaters. So autistic people will often resist eating foods when they're dysregulated or based off of texture, based off of color, based off of the salt, the amount of salt on it, needs for sameness. So routine, when you can't throw something last minute on my son, it's a no-go. It's a no-go. Meltdowns. And then, did I say stimming? Stimming.
Well, yeah.
Okay. So let's say that's like, maybe like for my son, the food thing is huge. So he's going to have an X kind of on that outside. And then for stimming, he's going to have something in the middle there. So that's the spectrum. It's not high or low. And the other part of the spectrum that is really important is that it can change. So like for my son, when he is really anxious or he starts something new. So when he started camp this summer, he only ate salty, crunchy, very predictable foods for like 2 weeks. I mean, because that's all he could handle, you know? Then once he gets used to it, then he started going into more of his like, I mean, he only has a menu of like 7 things, but he would go into some more of the other things that could be a little less predictable. Okay. If someone didn't get a lot of sleep, they might stim more than if they slept really well. Something like anything like that. Okay. And that's another reason why it's that kind of spectrum, because you can kind of move through in each of those categories.
Okay. Great. So you got a shout out again from Miss Gina. She said you are an amazing woman and mom.
Oh, thank you, Gina. Thank you.
And then
I'm guessing you are too. So
she really is. She's wonderful.
Yeah. Based on the questions.
Yeah. So we have another question from Bren B. She's asking, do you have conversations with him referring to your son after the meltdowns?
So I do. What I do is I don't anymore. But when I started to have conversations with him, I talked to him about him having really big feelings. He has a lot of autistic people have a very low tolerance for that kind of one-on-one talking, emotional, because remember, they're taking in everything.
Yeah.
So now when he has a big meltdown, I might say to him when he goes to bed that night, you know, actually, I really don't talk to him about it anymore. If he does something that's not appropriate, like throws a glass or something, I'll talk to him about that. I know, buddy, he knows the word dysregulated. Your body was feeling anxious.
Wow.
And you were angry. You felt really angry. Autistic people, again, I'm generalizing, but this is not all autistic people, but the sense of justice is really strong, like really strong. So he's like, you made me mad and I only threw one thing and I'm mad. I need to throw 5 things so you know how mad I am. Wow. Right. Or for instance, and this is something with my adult clients that I love, that I have a son now that I can understand where this developed. Like, if I talk to him, like, all right, Simon, you need to go inside. He's like, why are you being so mean? Because his pickup, he's not just picking up on my tone. He's picking up on my energy. He's picking up on my body language. He's picking up on what I'm asking him to do. I mean, their brains are taking in so much information.
Yeah.
And it's associated with the same part of the brain as trauma. So, Bren B, just to go back, I did in the beginning, I wanted him to understand what it was. Now I think we have worked really hard to get a language and an understanding of it so that the conversations don't have to happen as specifically. I might later give him a little extra love, kind of help him understand that like it was a tough day for both of us, something like that. But at this point, I don't. I did. I used to. Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much. Brent B commented again. She said, this is some great information. I love to hear that stuff. That's the purpose of the show. Awesome. And then we had someone else chime in saying that their son has a lot of meltdowns. Thank you so much for your comment. We appreciate you being involved.
So I want to say, if someone's having a lot of meltdowns, that's their nervous system. There's too much going on. So, I think that that is something to look into of what's causing the meltdowns. And obviously there's a lot of information that you need to get from this, but if he's having a lot of meltdowns and it's really intense, then seeing what his nervous system needs to calm down, to settle down is really important. I do not go by I'm very like, kids want to do good. Kids are doing the best they can. Kids let us know what they need based on their behaviors. So it's hard though. Whew.
And then Bren B commented after you answered her question. She said, awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. Sweet. So we have a few minutes left. I want to finish with one question. And Melissa, if you wouldn't mind answering this question in 2 minutes or less, because I want to respect our time here.
Oh, yeah.
But what language is best used with autism?
Oh, yeah. Thank you. So it's so basically the language that we were taught by non-autistic people a long time ago, which is not affirming language, is people with autism, a person who is autistic. That is by the community that has been really, we've asked people to not use that language, because if you think of this definition as autism being a genetically based neurological variant, it's a part of who I am. It's not like I'm here and autism's there. Like the autistic adult. So like there's nothing to be ashamed of. There's nothing to try to fix or change. I'm not going to change. I'm going to be autistic for the rest of my life. And the functioning of like the identity affirming language would be autistic person. They have autism, even saying ASD. Some people say it that way. That can be non-affirming. So using autistic person, autistic child, autistic adult, I want to see if I have autism, things like that, rather than this is a person with autism. I also want to share the people that are interested, a podcast that I adore. It's called Two Sides of the Spectrum. And it's really great because it's OT, occupational therapists, who are very active in the affirming movement of autism. So no ABA, really against the hand-on-hand training of children. And they do a lot of interviews with people that are working towards kind of normalizing society to say, I don't have to fit into your mold. I'm different. I'm a different thinker. I'm a neurodivergent person. You're a neurotypical person. Get over it. I'll get over it. That kind of thing, which is it's a beautiful way to be when you're used to putting yourself down for just your natural state.
That's great. Thank you so much. Awesome. Well, it is 8 o'clock, and I always want to respect the time. I'm going to throw our disclaimer back on the screen. This show is for informational purposes only. You are completely responsible for what you do with the information presented, and myself and all of our guests cannot be held liable for any misuse or misunderstanding of the information presented. Please always consult a trained mental health professional before making any decisions regarding treatment of yourself and others. As always, Melissa, it's an absolute pleasure having you on the show. Appreciate you being here, and I know you'll be back again.
Yes, I will. Thank you, Marcus.
Yeah, absolutely. Everyone else, thank you for being here and tuning in. We will be back next Thursday at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time, and every Thursday thereafter until who knows, big question mark, but we'll be back with another wonderful topic, another wonderful licensed therapist, but we will see you next week, Thursday at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. See you then.
Awesome. Bye.
Work. Watch you do my